All right, this introduction is going to be a little bit longer than some of the ones in the past because the work is a little bit longer. So please bear with me. First things first, remember that for this lab, unlike others, we really don't have overlap with the lecture. This is about maps, and that's important to a geologist, reading a map. This lab is about sort of reading a map. It starts at 3.81, and you have a first problem that you start right into on the bottom of page 54. You have to just basically add some detail. And you're going to go all the way to page 57. So have question 2 that's involving this map here. I'll talk a little bit about that. I'm also looking at 3.3, the bottom of page 55. Then you have the next 2 pages, 56 and 57, that you'll have to complete for this lab. 56 has more just questions that are from the map that you just handled on the page before, map 3.3. And then page 56 is asking for you to take what you see here as a sort of top view of a terrain. It's a topographical map where you have vertical lines or contour lines representing vertical height changes. You're taking from that top view and you're sort of taking yourself and looking at this from the side. What would it look like, this mountain range, this landscape from the side, as if you were driving up to it to go hiking on it? You're going to draw that down here. They call it a topographical profile. Okay, all that said, you're going to have to do some reading. This is going to take time. So grab your cup of coffee and just be thankful this isn't college algebra. You're not having to do any math. You just have to do some reading. And I know some of you out there are like, out. I'm not going to do any reading. Well, then you're going to probably just ride someone's coattails or find the answer online or yada yada. But for those who care, for those who want to learn, what you can do is go to page 46 and start reading. And it talks about, and you don't have to go all the way back to page like 43 where it talks about latitude and longitude. You just need to know how to read maps in terms of those contour lines, those contour intervals, that just means the height change. What are the interval heights that I'm marking? Is it 100 feet, 10 feet? You'll learn about that. You'll learn about the gradient on the bottom of page 47. You might have to determine the gradient on a map. That is the rise over run. That is literally knowing how to take, if we have a certain height increase, I'm going to divide that by how far it took to get to that height. So we'd say rise divided by the run. So if we go from one place and we go up that high, this height, we'd say, I know the slope, the gradient. You have to do that simple calculation in this lab. Last but not least, you'll have to also learn about what's called hache marks. On page 50, page 50, there's this term called hache marks, and what they're basically saying is when you look at a topographical map, if you come up, so intervals of 20, 340, 360, 380, and it's 400. When you get to the top of the hill and you see some of these sort of teeth marks here, what it's saying is you're now going downhill. So they'll have a repeat. The first one with teeth is always a repeat of the one contour line you just left. So this would be 400, that's 400. Then it's now 20 down, we'd be at 380 feet. And there's bottom, maybe it's just a little bit less than that because this is the last one that's at 20-foot interval. That's called a hache marks. And last, you'll need to also know how to generate what we said again is the side view of maybe a mountaintop that you're looking at from a top bird's eye view. Driving up to it, what would it look like? You'll have to generate what this is called a topographical profile. Let's look at where you have to do all this work. So on this first one, sea level is going to be 0. Above sea level, these contour marks, the first one is going to be 40 meters and the second one is 80, and you have to mark all these. And remember the hache marks, this would be at some value, that would be the same value, and then you're going down. That's our first assignment. Second, you'll have to, on number 2, draw in your own contour line. So it's not going to be connect the dots. If you're going to lose just all points if you do that. It's saying at 100-meter intervals from the sea level here. So you kind of want to think of this as rising to this side from top right to left. We're going to be rising up. And you can see that it goes from like 100, 250, 300, 400, 500. So it's rising up this way. What you're going to do is draw interval lines as best you can at what would be close approximations of the 100-meter contour line intervals. So here's our first one. It's right at 100. So I'd go in between the gap between this 132 value and 70. I'd maybe go right through the middle. And I'm trying to trace a line as best I can that stays at 100 meters. You say, well, I can't see where 100 meters. I know, but you're just still giving your best guess. Certainly don't come to this top side of 160. You'd stay maybe right here as you drew your line, as what you best are guessing is the 100-meter contour line. And you do the same thing for 200, 300, and so on. That's 2. We've got 3 more. The bottom of page 55 has what's called a drumlin. It's been scraped. This has been the mountain that, with the ice, the glacier moving this way, that'll be important for one of your questions. It's taking a lot of that soil, that mountain, and just spreading it, smearing it to the backside. It's called a drumlin. What you're asked to do is find the gradient, that is the rise over run from A to B and B to C. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but you just saw what you can measure is the vertical change from A to B by the contour line intervals. And then you can take this scale down here, and I would use, if I were you, a little Post-it note or 3x5 card and say, okay, that's maybe 1,000 feet. I mark that and move it again, and then maybe it's halfway, maybe it's 1,500 feet. Whatever you estimate that to be is what you're going with. And you'll have to show your work on the side in the next page of how you determine the gradient, the slope from A to B and from C to B. And it has questions on that. That's what, 3 now we've done. Just a little, just an introduction to. Again, don't forget you have to answer those questions for map 3.3 on the back of, on the page 56. All right, number 4. This is our last assignment. You have to take this contour interval map that it provides, this topographical map, and as if you're looking at this from the side, you would draw out a topographical profile. So I've already started with 2 values here. My little man here is hiking all the way from A to A prime, and he's starting at some height. So I put him at 740 feet because this first contour line says 700, and every one of the intervals is at 20 feet higher. So we go upstream. These little jagged arrows always point upstream. So I'm going from 700 to 720 to 740, and I'm just a little bit higher than that, but I'll put it at 740. So you go to 740, and I say that's where I am. Now, if I hike straight across, making my topographical profile, I would hike to a point where I'm at 720. So I would take my 3x5 card or a ruler and say, okay, I'm at 720. I come on straight down, and this is 710. 720 would be right here. And I draw a line because I'm coming down into that creek bed, so to speak. Then, of course, there's going to be a time where you go up. And so you just keep on going with your topographical profile. This is hard. But again, let me say, this ain't college algebra, so we're not thankfully doing any simplification of quadratic equation or something like that. Just take some reading, take some time. Hope it goes well. Email me if you have trouble. You do not go past page 57. And I'll even throw in this as a gift. You finish here, you don't need to do number 9. You don't need to do number 9. Just go up to question 8 on page 57. And of course, you had to start all the way back on page 54 here with number 1. So 1 through 8. Thanks. Bye-bye.